Hey everyone, welcome to Career Journey Podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Avila, and today's episode is really fun. And I know I say that every time, but it really is. They're all super fun. But this episode, we have Staci Taustine. Currently, she's a career coach for Teal, and you can find her at tealhq.com or Staci Taustine on Instagram. And if you've ever wondered about kind of low points in your career, how to build support systems, uncertainty in your career, kind of failing and growing, what it's like when things go wrong, having a long job search, how to find a job during or after COVID-19, networking, imposter syndrome, we talk about all of that and so much more. We also kind of talk about her journey. So she wanted to be a forensic investigator when she was young, to deciding that maybe she was leaning more towards the arts kind of way. And she ended up going into journalism and even teaching. She taught in Tanzania. And all of these things with kind of a drought in her career where she had a long job search, where she didn't have a job for quite a while, and how all of that led her to a career in career coaching. So please enjoy Staci Taustine. Hey everyone, welcome to the Career Journey Podcast, where we explore exciting careers and how to get them from the people who've lived it. I'm your host, Brittany Avila. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy. I kind of like what you were just saying. But that's exactly why I started it. And there's a lot to not only the careers that we don't understand or like we don't know about or don't hear about very often, which especially in the college community that I'm centered in, a lot of students have no idea. Like I'm in psychology, and the amount of career options in psychology is so vast. And students have no idea because it's too difficult for us to tell them everything. But not only that, I feel like in 2020 and beyond, you can even create jobs if there's something out there that doesn't exist yet. And that's what I try to tell students now is if it's not there, if you can't find it, you can create it. That's the amazing thing about the time we live in is you can just make a job out of thin air almost, depending on what it is, obviously.
Right. And so many of us find out what we want by doing things we don't want. And so, to some extent, it's ruling out the things that aren't, lighting up our heart, and then potentially proposing what does. To your point, the more exposure, the more we sort of step forward into new roles, the more that we grow in the ways that we sort of shine on our own. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, actually, I want to do this all the time. Like, let me do more of this and less of that. And so on and so forth. I feel like that's absolutely at the essence of the career journey for most of us, right?
Yeah, I love that less of that part of it, because I feel like a lot of people, myself included, get really nervous about wasting your time. Oh, I don't want to sign up for this major if I'm not going to like it, or I don't want to take this class and then it's a waste of time. Finding out what you don't want to do is just as valuable as finding out what you do want to do.
Absolutely. In my work, I've worked with over 1,000 people since the start of COVID-19. And wow. So it's been a journey and a lot of sort of learning from a lot of different folks, which is kind of how so many of us are out there doing work because we're good at it, but not necessarily because we love it. And that there's this special sort of connection when we can find what we're good at and we enjoy, right? I always compare it to when you get known for something that, like, once you're that person in the family who can put the printer together, you just like want to take your name off the mailing list. Like, no grandma, no Nana. I don't want to be the one to set up, your new printer, but you're good at it. And you're like, right, I know I can do it. I have that skill set, but that's not what I want to do all the time. And so I'm always talking with folks who are saying, yes, let's comb out the things that we're good at, but I hate, and get closer to the things I'm good at and I love, because those are the things that bring more fulfillment to my daily life. When I'm doing a job that is at the intersection of what I love and I'm good at, things start to click. And so I think that's what folks are seeing a lot of success with is when they can hone in on that sweet spot of intersection there, and then living in that space more often than not. I think, a lot of us are willing to do things, grin and bear it when it comes to sort of what's not in our strong suit, but
Right.
jobs that let us do what we love more often are definitely going to be the place that we stay and where we shine, I think.
I agree. Yeah. And then also kind of dispelling the myth that even though you love it, you're going to love all aspects of it. Because I absolutely love my job. I went to grad school for a long time. I didn't start my job till I was like 32 or something ridiculous. And I definitely love it, but there's still aspects that I don't. And sometimes I think that's a myth that if you love it, you have to love all of it. And
Totally. It's so funny when I'm working with job seekers and we're talking through how to answer these dreaded questions about, tell me something you really struggle with. And they're like, am I really supposed to answer that honestly? What do I answer to that question of, what is your greatest weakness? And we all have weaknesses or areas that will continue to be something that requires a lot of energy from us. So it's almost like a perpetual state of flexing where we have to lean into something that we hate. And there will always be some percentage of our job that requires us to do this. So I always share with them, I'm someone who loves big ideas and sort of initiating, but when it comes down to execution, I am exercising every bit of grit that I have to really truly follow through on the nitty-gritty pieces of the project execution. So what does it look like to know yourself really well, be able to show an interviewer that you have self-awareness, right? So we know we're not perfect. We know we're not good at everything. Can we shed some light on where those areas of effort lie? And then sort of articulate what we've put in place to be able to shine anyway, to be able to do a great job in light of those areas that will continuously take effort. So whether that's, having reminders in your Google Calendar when it's time to send the follow-up emails, like whatever the case may be, you can create those strategies for yourself. And, it makes the part that you don't enjoy that much more bearable because you still execute well. And I think that's what's encouraging. I wonder, like, is that your experience too? Like in that area where you're like, yep, that's a little part that I hate, but like I found the Band-Aid to cope with it and now we're all good. Like this is what we're doing.
I'm the opposite of you. I have some big ideas, but I'm much better at the execution part than the idea part. And so what I have found my strategy is to find people like you that are opposite of me and kind of work together. And if you can build a team and have kind of the support system of people that have the strengths where you lack and the weaknesses where you have strengths, I feel like that's the biggest help too.
100%. I dream of always being on teams they're balanced in that way. And I love when recruiters or hiring managers are thinking that way when they're hiring, purely from that place of if we can get a collection of folks with different strengths, we'll really be able to shine as a total package and not where we're just sort of hiring and replicating the same person over and over again. Because then we miss out. I guess we found out that we would be a good complement.
Good. Okay, I think we should probably start with where we normally start on the podcast now that we've had a little detour. So usually I just like to start at the beginning. Did you have any dreams or aspirations when you were a child?
I did.
Of what you would do?
Oh, yeah. I had two competing choices. Number one was to be the president. So, I'm not there yet.
Still hopeful.
There's still a chance. And then the other one was a forensic investigator. So I really wanted to catch the bad guys. That was my
that is
dream.
Popular in our psychology major. It's super popular. I wanted to be one at one time too, but most of our psych students want to do that.
I say all day. I'm on season 5 of Dexter, and so I satisfy that missed opportunity with TV. So
you were on it?
No, I watch it frequently, and that's the way that I address the fact that I am not a forensic investigator.
And so where did it kind of go from there? What happened maybe when you went to high school and started really thinking about what you wanted to do?
Yeah, so I would say that, I was told by a guidance counselor in high school that he never knew how I stood up straight because my right brain was so much stronger than the left. And so I regret to recall that memory that, he wasn't wrong in that writing and sort of all of the arts came much more naturally to me. I worked a lot harder for math and science. And so I kind of started to realize that I enjoyed writing. I enjoyed literature in general. And so perhaps, the forensic investigator route would require too much math. And so it was by default that I started to think about what I wanted to do. And I'm actually a first generation college student myself. And so I come
Nice. Me
from
too.
a family that absolutely encouraged me from day one. They said education would be the thing that would give me access to the world. And they worked tirelessly. Both of my parents, no sick days, 7 a.m., 10 p.m., all in Broadway. They all worked in Broadway box offices. Strange, funny fact. And so they always hoped that me and my sister would go to school and choose our career. Many of them sort of never got to have weekends or holidays with the family because it is such a sort of time-consuming business. And so, they both said, go and get your degree. And so when I had the chance to look for colleges, I kind of went the Google route. I was like, what's out there? And I found literally through a Google search, a well-known journalism school. And it turned out that it was at University of Wisconsin-Madison. My mom was like, I think that state's in the middle somewhere. So for those of us on the East Coast, it felt, random to choose a Midwestern state for college, but it was truly the best thing for me. I really went there with a commitment to getting into their journalism school to write. I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to get the truth out there. I wanted to do what a forensic investigator does, only as a journalist. And so that was the motivation. I loved school, absolutely loved learning. And it wasn't until I got there that, my path started to shift again. I was like, let me have an internship. I want to do public relations. And I was like, I don't know. This is a lot of not telling the truth. Like I wasn't sure if that was what I was going for in the first place. And so I was just going through what a lot of college students go through, which is like, I'm a junior and it's too late to change my major, right? Like, what do I do now? I don't want to do PR. We're approaching the financial crisis of 2008 and, the job market isn't promising, what is it going to be? And so I actually ended up going to Tanzania and they use your resume to place you in a role. And so I got teacher. I'm not sure exactly how that happened. I'm grateful to whoever was reading the resume, but they placed me as a teacher for kindergartners in Tanzania. And so I fell in love. I absolutely loved working with my students. And I was like, how do I do this if I went to school for journalism? And so at the time I went back to Google. Like, thank goodness Google's my best friend.
I don't know how people got away with it.
What were we doing before? I don't know.
I often say I would never have my PhD without Google. I don't know how anyone goes to school without it.
And it was such a change because we were using the card catalog when I was in the earliest grades. I was like, we really were the generation that went through a full transformation there.
All of it, yeah.
But yeah, so I ended up kind of doing Teach for America as an alternate certification pathway. And that forever shifted sort of the combination of events that happened after that. But my career trajectory is by no means linear. It's absolutely an example of following your heart, even to a point where others might question it, saying, Staci, I thought you wanted this. How come you're doing that? And it always made sense to me. That's the part I think is interesting about careers, that when you're someone who is listening to your heart and what your experiences are teaching you, it does kind of make sense in your own head. It's only when you start to be guided by the words of or judgments of others that you lose sight of where you're actually trying to go. So I think that's been a theme throughout my career journey.
And there's underlying themes I've noticed, especially from doing this podcast, from the people who don't have the linear careers. There's always still some underlying concept or theme that permeates all the different fields they go into. So like for you, it sounds like truth, like getting truth out there, telling stories. Teaching and journalism, they both tell stories and they both kind of try to expose the truth. And so they are more in common than we like to think normally.
I couldn't agree more. And it really like warms my heart to hear that validation. I think, working with folks who are trying to tell their career stories, sometimes they feel like their passion won't land with others. And, when someone's willing to hear your story or willing to sort of look at the overall narrative, it does unveil some theme, right? And it makes sense suddenly why you might be just right for the thing that you're doing. And so, besides astrology confirming that I was meant to be a career guide, I think there is this sort of dotted line all the way through, which is, I love working with people, collective learning, bringing together shared wisdom, and then telling stories that help people get to where they want to go. And so that there is a very clear theme from what I can tell, and it means a lot to me that you see it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's easier for me too, because I think my story is so like what I wanted to be when I was a kid. I wanted to be a teacher, an actress, and a psychologist. And I was like, okay, well, I ended up getting a degree in psychology and teaching, and like teaching's part acting too. So it all kind of works together. But initially when I tell like students that, they're like, well, if you wanted to be an actress, like, what are you doing now? And I'm like, well, I'm acting on the stage right now or in the video I make for students. So it all kind of weaves together somehow.
I love that. And you're the one that asked the questions, but I'm wondering, like I was just talking with my partner this morning and he's like, would you ever go back and undo any of the things that you did? And he's like, my guess is no, right? And the truth is no, absolutely not, right? And I'm wondering, given that you had probably bites of each of those things, like how do you feel looking back on them? Like, did you need them all to be where you are now? Or are there some that maybe you would have skipped?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think especially all my years of drama definitely prepared me for teaching because it's so much easier to get up and talk and even to do like improv kind of taught me a little bit about teaching too, of how I can just kind of go off the cuff and start talking about something. And if something else comes up and it's out of the blue and it's not what we expected, we can shift and move. And teaching really requires kind of that ability to move, as you would know, and right. How to shift and re-explain something if they're not understanding. And I think all of those years of taking drama classes, of doing kind of those improv, which I hated improv, but all of that kind of prepared me for where I'm at. And so without that, I'm not sure if I would be quite as good as I am now. Not that I'm great or the best yet, but where I'm at now, that definitely helped prepare me. So I don't think I would undo it.
Yeah, that was my answer too. I think it was truly like, no, actually, because it does require more explaining and it does require discussion of transferable skills. But at the end of the day, right. Each one of those stops on my career journey prepared me for exactly where I am today. And so I absolutely wouldn't undo a single one of them. And I wish that students who feel the pressure to get it exactly right the first step that they take could feel permission to see it evolve. It's like each step kind of like adds on to the next step and adds on. I always say, like, if you were to look back on your career at the end and say, wow, that was a wild ride, I really appreciate what it added up to be overall, then we would have done it right. It should take some of the pressure off of each individual choice for us that, we can't actually mess up. We can always sort of get closer to the path we were meant for, as long as we're clear on what we're here to do in some capacity.
And I'm so glad you said that, because now my students can hear it from somebody else's voice other than mine. And I'm going to take that quote and post it in the classroom of just,
you can't mess up.
I'll be like, other people said it, not just me. Like, you can, it's okay. It's okay to fail. It's okay to misstep. It's okay not to know exactly. My biggest thing is I'm part academic advisor too. And one of the reasons I became an academic advisor is because I had no clue what I was doing. I changed, even within psychology, I changed my emphasis each step of the way. I have no idea what I want to do. Even now I'm like, I still kind of want to do other stuff with all of this. And I'm like, so I'm still figuring it out. And I feel like sometimes students and young professionals now have so much pressure to get it right. And I think it's this kind of pipeline. They think you go to college, you get a job, and then you just stay there or whatever. And it just doesn't really work like that anymore. And you're able to maneuver and you're able to have, transferable skills to something else. And, you can mix and match. I think I didn't declare my major until I was like a junior. And so helping students figure out that you don't have to know, you don't have to have it all figured out. Even after you graduate, you don't have to have it all figured out. I mean, I've been out of undergrad for, oh gosh, almost 10 years, no, like 8 years now. Still don't fully know what I want to do.
What do you want to be when you grow up? And most adults say, I don't know yet. I'll get back to you. Right.
Yeah.
So I agree. It's just like, we all have to give ourselves permission to keep growing, to keep learning, and to keep pushing our limits. I think there's something to that stops us from being complacent too. How many times have you heard from folks like, I go to work, I do the thing, I've gotten really good at the thing, right?
Right.
And it
But I
starts to
hate
be,
going to work and it's drudgery and I dread Mondays and
yeah.
yeah.
And in an effort to work towards Mondays that we look forward to, part of that is allowing ourselves to change and grow, and to follow that path when it starts to emerge. It's almost like you wake up and you're like, I wonder if I should explore that thing that I didn't realize I really love more than I gave myself credit for. And it doesn't have to be in our job either. I think that's the other thing, is that I see it as possible to be fully committed to our career and still have passions that intersect with it, right? Like, folks are talking a lot about professional branding, right? Everybody needs to have a brand. You need to be able to articulate your brand. I'm sure you're talking to students all the time about how they speak to who they are, and how that is important in putting out sort of their story on LinkedIn or on their resume. But there's sort of like this human component where we're both human and employee, and there's a way to have those things live next to each other. And so, look at you, like, you have this podcast and you're an advisor, and what a badass you are, right? Am I allowed to say that? Like, you have this whole side hustle, and side hustles are cool, and that helps us learn more and grow more and contribute better in our professional 9 to 5 too. So I think, the more that young people get permission to explore their passions and still have the 9 to 5, the better off we'll all be, to really have all of our options available to us.
Yeah. Oh, and sorry, I know I was moving around. I was actually writing that down because I want to put that in one of my classes, about teaching about your brand. Because I always try to tell students about, like, get on social media, especially now the younger generation is like, well, I don't want Facebook, and, Facebook's for old people and all this stuff. And I was like, well, the people in the careers right now that you want and the people in the university that you're at are older. They're on Facebook. Like, you need to have a presence on kind of all these different things, and you need to have a brand. And that was just a good way of explaining it.
And the younger you start, the better. Because what I say to a lot of people is, if you don't determine your brand, somebody else will. So you really want to get ahead of it and decide how you want to be known. How do you want people to think of you and talk about you? And, how do you want coworkers to speak about their experience with you? Because if you're not clear on what you want that to be, it will just evolve naturally, and sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. So, can you be in the driver's seat for your own brand and, be creative and have fun with it? Because nowadays, whether we like it or not, everything we say or do starts to show up online. And when we're involved in other spaces or, showing up, I was laughing that I did one of these online, silent discos. And I was like, I wonder what they do with the recording of this, right? Like, am I just like the career guide bopping around in the middle of silent disco? Chances are yes. And so let me make that part of my brand. Like, I am someone who enjoys, music and dancing. And so that can be something that I can share publicly, but let us own it and let us be the one who guides the intersection of our personal and professional interests and passions. So if that's encouraging for your students, I hope that they see a place for the stuff they care about in sort of their path forward, and that they don't have to keep it totally separate or have it disappear on, Snapchat's like old now, right? That's not a thing. But
This
whatever
is one
comes
thing
next.
I'm glad I teach college because I have 2 kids, and I'm like, now I'm gonna be able to ask my college students what apps my children are playing with when they're
Right.
older. Because Snapchat was the first one that made me feel old because I was like, I don't know how to use it.
I don't get it.
I know, I know. But I think there's also this separation. A lot of young students think that they need to separate, like social media is for fun. That's what I do for fun. And I try to tell them, no, social media is also for networking. It's for growth. It's for opportunities. Tons of my opportunities came from social media. Actually, this podcast, I threw out the idea because I've had this idea for a while and I was like, I don't know. I'm too scared. I had so much imposter syndrome. And I threw it out on Twitter and I was like, who thinks this is a good idea? And enough people were like, yes, go with it. And like people gave me advice. And so I started the podcast because of it. And, I find out about jobs from it. And I've seen tons of people develop their brand on social media so well that it sparked careers. Like I was just talking about, there's this woman that I had been following on Twitter for a little while. She's in like science.
Mhm.
And she started TikToks, like little science TikToks for kids about like how to do experiments. And then all of a sudden today, my son's scrolling through Netflix and he stumbles on her show. And I'm like, whoa. So that kind of all started from social media. She got big enough, then she was able to get her own show on Netflix. So it can open doors and opportunities that you don't even think about yet.
Totally. And, working with folks who are mid-career too, it's, how do I be a thought leader? Like, what is this thought leadership thing? And I was like, well, it doesn't have to be that serious. We don't have to be an expert, but we just need to show up for ourselves, right? So it's like taking the time to share content on the things where you know a lot about it. So for anyone who has something that people go to you for, if you're the person that people are always asking about clothes, or you're the person that they're always asking about, tech, live into that and see that as an opportunity to share your content. That's where you have a special competitive edge. And so sometimes imposter syndrome blocks that. Like you said, we don't see ourselves as being any more intuitive or any more in the know than the next person. And so we don't credit ourselves with our value. We don't think there's content there. We think that's for the bloggers or for the other people who know what they're talking about. And in reality, you might know what you're talking about. And so in the off chance that you do, track it, put it out there somewhere and see if it resonates. Like you said, maybe it'll take, a minute, but people on Twitter are like backing you up. Like, yeah, go do that thing. And kudos to you for following through on it. I think that's the other half of it, right? Is like, once you get the validation, then it's the follow through. Like, figure out what platform to do it on and how to get people to come on board with you. But I love that as just like the call to action. If it's there, do it.
And just like you, I was Google University. Aside from I had a tremendous person that kind of helped guide me in some of the setup for it. I just Googled what's the best. There's tons of blogs out there already. There's tons of videos about how to set stuff up. So it's pretty easy. And then just remember too, the highest paid YouTube star, like last year, the year before, was an 8-year-old kid who reviews toys, and he's made like $8 million or something ridiculous. Like, I'll have to fact check exactly how much it was, but it's ridiculous.
If that's not encouragement, then I don't know what is. Like, $8 million. Done and done.
For like an 8-year-old kid that just sits there and opens toys and talks about it.
What a dream come true. See, like, where do you go from there though? He might, it's like, that sounds like the peak career to me. I'll go back and review toys.
I mean, it's spawned. Now they have their own line of toys, which my kids freak out about all the time. And I'm like, you don't even know this kid. They have cereal, everything. It's insane.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So I was just saying we should back up a little bit and go back. You were teaching kind of in Tanzania, and then you realized you wanted to do like Teach for America to get teaching experience. And then where'd you go from there?
So I taught for 3 years, absolutely fell in love with my students. They are the lights of my life, still in touch with all of them today, in college and killing the game. And since then, sort of, life happened, right? There's the intersection of our plans and then reality. And so, a family member of mine got really sick, and I needed to move from Baltimore back to New York to be there to be with her during her last couple of days there. And so it was a really scary time, like when you've built a career path here, I think I'm going to do teaching. That's the thing I picked. Right. And so I got my master's in it. Planning to be the expert. And so I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do to be able to spend time with her? And so, you know, there was this sort of gut check moment of, do you want to teach forever? Should you get a different license? How is this going to work? And so I took a leap of faith, one of those things that people talk about on the retrospective timeline where they're like, it was totally worth it. I took this, temp position with no benefits. And you're like, you thought what when you did what? And so that was me. I saw this opportunity to facilitate a program for young people across New York City around youth adult partnership and advocacy and education. So a chance to work with young people, to partner with the New York City Department of Education to improve schools in the direction of what kids and young people cared about. And so it was kind of that intersection of what I had learned in the classroom, which was that these were imperfect conditions and that young people had a lot to offer and a lot to say about what they wanted for themselves and what they wanted out of their education. And so I jumped on it. I was like, let's do this. And before I knew it, it was right time, right place. Facilitating and designing curriculum around this was the sweet spot. It was what I loved, what I was passionate about. And it was growing, a great indicator for those of us when you end up in the right place at the right time when it's growing and there's a budget. It's a pretty special thing. And so I had the honor of growing that program, designing it, and working with all of the key stakeholders in the DOE to see change happen. During that time, they partnered to sort of welcome a new chancellor. Again, timing, right? They really talked about how important it was to have students around the table, part of the discussion before policies get made. And so they started to create chances for youth voice to be part of policy and practice in New York City. And so I got to be the director of that program and see all of that work through with the students. And so I would say that was my first dream job. It was that first moment where I got to experience euphoria, being part of the whole thing from soup to nuts and seeing the benefits of all the hard work really lit up my heart. And I fell in love with it and learned that, young people often have what it takes to lean into change, and that we as adults actually struggle with it more. Working with adults within a system where we could feel how hard it is to change things. I sort of had this moment of, wait, maybe I need to be working with adults, actually. So as much as I love young people, I think there's this other side of it where young people actually have what they need in that sense. And I wanted to work with adults to have these breakthrough moments and ahas of change is possible, right? We can do this no matter how difficult it might look. There are ways to get past the status quo in our lives, whether that's on a personal level or a systemic level. That's the work that I wanted to do from then on. And so it led me to seek out opportunities to work with adults around this topic. And so I sort of followed that path to training and coaching teachers citywide, helping to partner with them to imagine new ways to create cultures that are safe and secure and supportive of students in their classrooms. And then had this amazing opportunity to pursue a role as a career guide. And so that's where I am today. The only part is that it came on the heels of a very, very long job search. So for anyone who is out of work and has been out of work for a long time, I did it while it was thoroughly unsexy. So being out of work during COVID, you're among 30 million. I was right before that, so unemployed very much by myself. And so what I'll say there is that, there's a lot of blame and shame that comes with that feeling of, I thought I did all the right things. I thought I got the right degrees. I thought I prepared myself in all the ways that I could, and still nobody wants me, right? What happened? Where did I go wrong? And so I think none of us are able to avoid that feeling at some point in our lives, that we question our choices, we question our ability to be good enough again, we question whether or not we're ever going to get where we want to go. And so I would say that the months leading up to my role now were some of the hardest, most difficult career moments, and they tested me in all the ways that I needed to be tested to be prepared to support people on the back end. I think I was just like, being a career guide at the start of a global pandemic is a very strange place to be.
Yeah.
But a really painful stint of unemployment prepared me for it. So that is why I feel qualified to be in my role now, and lucky to be able to work with people during this time, because it's really hard and really, really challenging to be navigating that with all of the additional stressors of COVID-19. So really, really grateful for this unconventional path that I've taken, and loving sort of my work with Teal now. We started, we're a brand new startup, and we launched right into this very challenging job market in April.
Oh, wow.
So we sort of kind of kicked our plans and decided that we needed to do a big effort, a big push to serve 1,000 people in my first 4 weeks on the job. And so
Wow.
that was a fantastic and overwhelming experience that I wouldn't trade for anything, because we were able to help people in one of the more scary moments of the sort of impacts of folks being hit with layoffs and a lot of furloughs and things that have been happening. So it's been both sad and hard and rewarding in that we're getting to see people get back to work and not just get a job, but use this moment as a chance to pick something that they love, and still land somewhere that inspires them, even in imperfect conditions. So that's been.
So even for some people, maybe even make a better leap, maybe have it challenge them in a new way and get them to where they should have been.
100%. People are like using this moment to evaluate and reevaluate, and people are being super brave. Like, I'm seeing people say, you know what, I have been waiting my whole life to do this thing and I wasn't ready to do it, but this situation is just calling for it. And so I'm pursuing an entirely new path. We run a program called Career Shift. And so it gives people a chance to do that thinking work to figure out, what do I actually care the most about, and what do I want to do next? And then the program I lead is called Career Assist, where we kind of give all the tactical methods for sort of going out there and getting that role that you've decided to focus on. And so it's been really cool.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
So can you walk us through a little bit kind of what your day-to-day looks like as a career guide? Like, what are some things you do to help people figure those things out?
Absolutely. So right now it looks like my home office. So I put on whatever version of sweatpants looks good with my, very professional top, and then sort of get grounded here at my, central office. And I work with 7 to 10 teams a week. So I coach folks in teams of anywhere from 10 to 50. And so each session is over Zoom, where we all log in together and sort of go through 8-session curriculum over the course of 4 weeks. So each session, we sort of bring together a combination of content, combined team experience. We call them teams because it's like finding the coworkers that you don't have, and you're kind of in session together. You get to know each other, learn about each other's career paths and the learning that you may or may not have found to this point. And then we share each other's networks as well. And so during our time together, we start with sort of defining the goals, thinking from a mindset of ourselves as the product, right? I think that's what's interesting, is that a job search is deeply personal. It feels like a lot of rejection. I said I've never been rejected more in anything besides job searching than dating. Like, those were like the two places where I felt like it was like if I'm getting swiped left on dating, then I'm getting swiped left on,
All
applying
at
for
the same
jobs. It's just
time.
like, what a time period of rejection, right? And so how do you combat that when you're going through it at such high volumes, right? If you're applying to dozens of jobs a week, hundreds of jobs a week, you can do apply on LinkedIn and get rejected hundreds of times, right? And like, how does the human
Before they
spirit
even read your
how does the
your
human
resume.
spirit survive that level of rejection? And so I think part of it is getting clearer about who we want to date, right? Not just who wants to date
Right.
us. And so part of the early phase of our process is getting clear on that. Like, what do we want? What are we going to go out and pursue? Because it's where we want this career choice to take us. And is it in direction of the shift or change or growth that we want to see for ourselves? And so, that's where we start. And, we could stay there for as long as it takes, but the curriculum graduates all the way through to helping people create their resume, sort of how they'll share about themselves on LinkedIn, really land on sort of strategies for inbound, getting people to come to them and or getting ahead of some of these postings. Nowadays, you see postings that are 30, 40, 50 days old. And you don't know if it's even worth applying to because it might just have gotten auto uploaded to the site. And so
Right.
kind of combing through and finding tactics that work for us and sort of working towards a negotiation where folks feel empowered to know their worth and speak to their worth, even in an imperfect sort of job market. I think what's hard is that we've all been told we have leverage when we have multiple offers, and this market just isn't setting us up for competing offers and lining them up in, a well-timed sort of a scenario where we get to say like highest bidder, go ahead and take us. And so
Right.
it's kind of a strategy that we want folks to know that they still have the capacity to speak to their worth. They can still be compelling in their rationale and their reasoning when they come and join companies they're excited about. And that there are a lot of companies out there who are really encouraging in the sense that they are wanting to pay people their value. They are wanting transparency. They are wanting to empower their future employees to join and stay and grow with their companies. And so we really explore all of these topics and see it as an ongoing effort. So it's not just the minute you land your job, it's see you later. It's actually, we want to be with you long term. We want to partner with you in a way that maybe doesn't exist. And maybe that's the sort of newness of what we're hoping for, is that, could there be partners in our career who are going to cheer us on and support us even when we shift, right? There's this hard part about growing in our career that involves loss, like we lose our coworkers or we lose, our office, or in this case, now we're all remote. Can we
Right.
sort of have this home base to come back to where we say, you know what, I'm getting ready to go through my first 360 review. How do I prepare for it? What do you all think? How's your review going? And that's what we're seeing our members do, is that like all of the folks who are part of Teal are super giving, and they help each other think through the tricky moments and anticipate challenges. And it's really cool to see people sort of throw out the old rules about what you share and what you don't share, and be really transparent with each other so that we can all learn and grow together. It's been phenomenal, and getting to see the results of that are wild. Like for people to
Yeah.
say, I never talked about my salary before, and I've never like had anyone to bounce ideas off real time going into a negotiation. And so they've helped each other and continue to do so even after they've gotten hired. Like they're still coming back and sort of letting us other members know when their new company's hiring. And I love that. I think that's what
Right.
my hope would be for all of us, is that we were all sort of that connected and that plugged in, that networking didn't have to feel transactional. Like it really feels like you just get to help each
Yes.
other. And that would be awesome.
Those are my favorite networking groups, where you just feel like friends kind of helping each other and giving each other advice and resources.
Totally.
I know. I try to do that with students too. I wish more students would come back after they leave. Like how you're talking about your clients will come back and offer resources and talk to people. I would love for more students to do that, to come back and tell other students exactly what happened once they graduated or where they went or provide a resource or things like that.
And it's funny because I always tell our folks to go back and see their college advisor. So maybe
Yeah,
if we cross paths, there'll be people coming back to see you because
I hope
I
so.
I
Oh,
believe you all are phenomenal resources post graduation and so giving and so insightful when it comes to helping people know, you know, about the market in which they're applying. So you have some of the greatest insights into, you know, market value and data analysis when it comes to thinking about the industries they want to be in, and if they're changing or shifting mid-career, they can still go back. And so I think a lot of us just overlook that our college resources are still there to go back to. And so, you know, we're definitely sending them your way. We're like, please
good.
go see these folks. Like, they still care about where you've landed, and they want you to share when you've grown, because that definitely helps the folks behind you. So hopefully that's
Well,
a
and
trend that we can send on the upswing.
it's one of the hardest parts, I think, of my job, both as teacher and advisor. You were talking about kind of the loss you have in a job. It's one of the losses I have. Like, you get to know students so well, you know, in a class, over multiple classes, over years of advising. I get to feel like these students are like part of my world and part of this like team. And then they're just gone one day and they never come back. And you kind of have this loss of all these people, you know, each year just start to drift away. And to have them come back, partly like selfishly, just to get to see where they are. We're super interested in what happens to you and where you went, because again, they matter to us. The students matter to us. But then also to help us figure out what those job markets look like, keep us updated so that we can tell other students or be resources for other students that, you know, maybe you wish you had a student come in or a former student come in and tell you kind of what happened. You could be that. You could always come back into a classroom and be like, hey, I went into this job afterwards. Here's how it's been.
Totally. And I wonder sometimes if it's this, we're all waiting to be a finished product. You know, like I
Yeah,
can only go back when I have the shiny nameplate or the corner office. And like, let's dismiss
right,
that myth that like none of us are a finished product. And like, you don't
right.
have to wait until, you know, you own the company to come back and share, you know, where you've been and what you've done. I want your students to know, and I want all of our folks out there who are feeling so half baked or almost done or not there yet, that like that is still huge. Like, that every step
Yeah.
is worthwhile and progress is everything. And so there's learning from all of that. And so you don't have to be a finished product to come back and share your wisdom or your knowledge. You don't have to have the highest title to do that. What
Mm-hmm.
matters more is, you know, what you're out there learning, and if you're willing to share that with us, because I think that is the kind of tone I want to set with the folks I'm working with, which is that it's a career journey, you know, to speak to your
Right.
podcast, like it's a journey, and, you know, it doesn't have to wait until you've arrived at whatever destination you're waiting to get to really talk about it and share, because we're all, you know, just cooking. Like, none of us are done. So let's just, you know, be honest
I was
about
just
that.
I was just going to say, I would take it a step farther to say, I don't know that anybody ever gets to a final finished product, because if you do, then where else do you go? You have nowhere to grow and move, and then that's kind of boring. So I feel
Right.
like even if you get to that shiny title in that corner office that you want, where do you go after? You still have some aspiration after that. You just shift it. It's just a new aspiration. So, and then for my kind of career with my students, I would love for them to come back even when they're in grad school. So psychology is something where a lot of students go to graduate school. And you know, you have grad students who sometimes don't feel like they have a place or a voice to say stuff or to communicate, or really that power, that agency to come back and explain anything. They're like, I think grad school is kind of a place where your imposter syndrome really like hits a new level, and you're like, well, I don't know anything, I can't go back and like talk to undergrads. And it's like, you're precisely the person to talk to, because you're that next step that they're trying to get to. You know, they're not going to go from undergraduate, at least in this type of area, they might not go from undergraduate to a shiny job. They might need to go to graduate school next, and you're that next step. So you're the perfect person to come back and talk to them.
100%. And I think that speaks to the value of mentorship too. I think a lot of us
Mhm.
are out there craving mentorship, but if someone's not offering it, or if someone doesn't make it clear that they're willing to answer your questions or to be accessible, it makes it that much harder for someone to seek it out. And so I would love that idea of folks in grad school making that effort. I mean, it's a busy time, it's a stressful time, and you may be feeling, the heat of imposter syndrome, but if you were able to make that space for one person, that could change so much. And that you could continuously leverage that reciprocal mentorship as you grow in both of your careers. I think that's something that I've heard folks really say was of value to them when they did have that person in their life. And for those of us who craved it, definitely probably would have loved to have that person seek them out along the way and not just have it
Yeah.
all fall on someone to go out and find a mentor. It's like, how many people do you hear say, oh, just go find a mentor, as if it were that simple?
Yeah. How am I supposed to do that?
What does that actually look like?
Where do I look? Yeah. It's another reason why I try to really, I know I harp too much for my students. They tell me to stop, but social media is a great place to find mentors. I see so many graduate students in online communities offering advice of how to do things. And as a former graduate student, I'm like, you need to listen to this. And I'll like retweet it for my students and try to send them their way. But I was like, there's tons of good mentor spaces on social media with people. I have tons of mentors out there that I've never met face to face, but I've seen, over Zoom or just on social media, just talking. So even venturing out of your comfort zone online can be a good space to get that mentorship.
Totally. Like Slack communities,
Yeah.
at TL, we do a lot online. And so groups like Ladies Get Paid, I mean, phenomenal resources where, you can't even keep up with the number of resources that they're
Yeah.
sharing to be able to learn at the rate that it's coming. And so I completely agree that if you know or are willing to look for, as you said, Google University, the places where people are talking, then what's the harm in getting involved and trying to join the
Yeah.
conversation?
And again, it brings up tons of resources. A lot of my opportunities have come from those spaces online. So it can be from anywhere. How would, if we have listeners that are interested in taking part in a program like Teal that you're a part of, how would they get involved in something like that? How would they sign up to be a client in that situation?
Sure. So we are online. Our website is tlhq.com. And what you would do, we're actually in the process of designing a specialized quiz that will help you determine what your needs are. And so, whether if it's a student from one of your programs, they're likely sort of looking for the Career Assist program to help with all the practical application and getting into their desired fields. But if they're folks who are really considering a shift and want to sort of take our programming to explore what their other interests might be or to get clarity on where their focus might be, the quiz will help them determine, which is the best fit.
Nice.
And then we actually are really reasonably priced compared to all of the other resources that are out there. And the rationale behind that was that we wanted this to be accessible to students and to young people who are just getting out there into the world, and exposure is the barrier. We want you to be able to be in a community where you can meet other people who've worked in all different fields. One of the coolest parts of being in a teal team is that it's intergenerational. So you get folks who are every age in a variety of different fields. And it kind of makes it easy to have these like informational interviews where you can ask your questions of like, how did you become a product manager? And what was your major for that? Or how can I turn my major into that? Right? Like that's the cool part about it.
Right.
And so all of our programs are just $99 for the whole experience. So 8 sessions with all of the content and the option to join membership. And so folks would be able to take the whole experience and then decide if they wanted to join long term, so that we can support you throughout the entirety of your career journey. But again, it's worth, I would say, what you get, because I think paying for one-on-one coaching and what folks are out there uh, sort of charging to get your resume redone and all of this stuff. I'm sure like in your work, you see folks debating if they should invest in something like this. At the end of the day, like we want people to learn how to do it so that they can do it always. We don't want anyone to feel beholden to a service that you have to pay for to get what you need. We want you to know how to do what you need. And we want you to feel confident and empowered to do that year over year, right? So that as you're growing in your career journey, that you're not relying on an external resource to be able to thrive and excel. And so that's what I think is most worthwhile about an investment like that, which is that, what's the saying? You can, hand someone a fish or teach them how to fish kind of thing. This is like the learning
Right.
how to fish so that you can always go out and do it yourself. And so that's what the teacher in me loves. I'm like, that's what I would want for anyone that I have taught over the years. And I'm looking forward to the day that my, earliest fourth and fifth graders start to show up in one of my courses, because I think that will be the most full circle moment I could have imagined is sort of seeing
Right.
them through to career, which
Oh,
would be a dream of mine.
yeah. Oh, that would be awesome.
For sure.
So, since we're kind of coming up on time, it's going to be a little hard. Is there like one big piece of advice that you give to most people, or is there kind of a main theme to your career advice that you would give people?
Oof. That's a good one. I think if there is nothing else that I could ever say to anyone, I would say you already have everything you need. That, who we are destined to be and the work we want to do lives in us already. It's just kind of going out there and building those opportunities to learn and grow and harness new skills so that we can sort of achieve them. And so I always find that people are coming to me and saying, I don't, I need this and I need this and I need that. And I'm thinking, you are powerful, you are strong, you are smart, you are, full of wisdom and experience. But, it's just polishing. It's all just getting, your materials right, speaking to your own skills and really believing that you have them. I think, what you said about imposter syndrome is what we all face every day. And so in my work as a career guide and coach, or even as a person, that's something I think about every day. It's just like, let's go out there and do our best to be ourselves and offer what it is that we're good at. And the world will be better for that. I think the more that we are all doing it, the better off we'll be, and the less time we'll have to think about how we're not ready yet or not good enough yet.
Oh, I love that advice. That is amazing. Oh, I parallel that too. I always say to my students is you can learn anything. And so if you have the desire, the drive, and the underlying skills, like you were talking about transferable skills, as long as you have the skill set, you can go into anything. You can switch and pivot into anything, because in my line of work, what I'm doing now with this podcast and the social media around it, I get, a lot of HR directors, a lot of people are like, well, I already know that I have to teach somebody, so I just want them to do X and Y. And I'm like, that's exactly my point. You are going to teach them the job. If they have the underlying skills, if they have the passion, just like you're saying, you already have what you need. You can learn the rest kind of when you get there. Or, obviously some jobs might require like a certain license or something like that, but you can get that and then, learn the rest as you go.
Totally. 100%. This has been
Well,
so nice. I've so enjoyed my time with you. You've made it so
yay.
comfortable, and what a fun conversation. Thank you for
Well,
having me.
thank you. I've had a lot of fun too. And you gave so much advice that, again, I'm going to force all of my students to listen to this episode.
Well, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm on Instagram if anyone wants to, I put out some, positive advice and encouragement for, crummy days. If anyone wants it, it's at Staci Taustine on Instagram. And of course, Teal also is on LinkedIn. It's Teal HQ if you want to follow us and are interested in learning more. I'm happy to talk to anyone one-on-one or
Awesome.
willing to connect over Zoom or Slack or whatever folks need. So wishing all of your students all of the best. And I hope the journey is fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Podcast. They have the coolest advisor ever.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Head over to our website at careerjourneypodcast.com for more info, the latest episodes, and to join the discussion about careers. See you next time.